Okay, so why teach Charlie Hebdo? Why would you do that? Well, I do it every year anyway, because free speech and satire are sort of embedded in democratic institutions. As a matter of fact, it's one of the ways that you can't get sued for copyright law in the US, Canada, Britain, Australia, all over Europe. We have entrenched laws. So if you are making fun of Nike, normally if you just use Nike, and I'm going to say Nike 18 times and now Nike's going to sue me. If you were using, if you're doing a parody, which is like the Saturday Night Live stuff we saw, like Black Jeopardy, right? That's a parody of a game show. No one is going to sue Saturday Night Live for having Black Jeopardy because it's plain to see that they are not actually trying to be Alex Trebek. So the sort of legal barrier to getting sued is that no one in their right mind would confuse you with the product, right? No one is going to watch Saturday Night Live Black Jeopardy and be like, oh, that's Alex Trebek. That's real, right? So that's sort of like it's entrenched even in our copyright law. And free speech is entrenched in democratic institutions. It's part of how we see ourselves. You know, we're not perfect by any means, and we talk about that a lot, but it is entrenched that you can say and criticize your government here. I've always been proud, one of the few things that make me proud as a Canadian is that our prime ministers historically have all gone on Canadian TV shows that made fun of them. And you rarely would see American presidents do the same. And so that's kind of like one of the reasons why I teach satire, right? It's integral also to the English language. When I was learning French, I knew that I could speak French properly when I started getting the joke. Like if you are, you know, if English is your second language, or any new language, when you get the joke is when you really understand the language. And if you're not getting the joke, it's very often because you don't have a strong enough sense of the language to get the tone and to get why that's funny, or you just don't get the references because you're not strong enough in the vocabulary of the language to get it. So satire is super important to teach for all those reasons. And I always teach about Charlie Hebdo because people need to realize that satire isn't always good and it's not always fair. A lot of Charlie Hebdo's cartoons are, I would consider them offensive, sexist, racist, you know. But it's part of living in a democratic society. What makes it especially difficult this year teaching about Charlie Hebdo is that on Friday, I'm filming this on Sunday, so on Friday, a teacher in France was beheaded by a student. The teacher was teaching his class on, it's the 5 years since Charlie Hebdo, and they're finally having a trial, and he was going to hold a debate, and parents had complained because he was rebroadcasting or re-showing the cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. And for a lot of devout Muslims, you can never give an image of God. It's a thing. That's why when you go to a mosque, you don't see, it's not like when you go to a Catholic church here and you see like pictures of Christ. They don't have that. They just have writing, right? So it was offending the community. And as a teacher, I probably would have been a little sensitive to the community. Like, I don't think that I would have shown those particular cartoons, but I completely think that what he was doing when you're teaching about dissent and you're promoting debate and you're promoting critical thought, that's the core of what we're supposed to do. That's what teachers are supposed to do. So when I heard this story, my mom actually came and she said, oh, you better not teach that Charlie Hebdo lesson. I was like, oh no, I'm going to teach that Charlie Hebdo lesson even more. I'm going to put it on the internet. Because you know what? You need to learn to disagree without violence. We all do. The whole point of living in a free society is that we can disagree peacefully. And I'm not going to go into detail about that shooting. You can, or it's not a shooting. The guy who did it was shot. But a student, like, beheaded a teacher. And he and members of his family have been charged. And I don't want at all to say for this to promote any kind of anti-Muslim anything, because if you know me at all, you know that's certainly not the case. But it's just, I guess, it kills me to think that somebody would actually just do that. It seems so crazy, and the world seems really crazy this weekend. And I think what happens is people's brains turn off. And this whole unit is about using your critical thinking skills. So that's basically why I'm teaching about Charlie Hebdo. All right? So when you go forwards with this, the next thing is you're going to be doing your own political cartoon. Now, I don't want anybody doing what I call punching down. So punching down is when a person in power or perceived power goes and makes statements about people who have less power. For example, all of those cartoons that we saw that were they were published by men, and they were anti-women's suffrage. The men had the vote, therefore they had the power. The men owned the newspapers, therefore they had the power. And so that was an example of punching down. So I don't want any of your assignments to be punching down. You could see if somebody like makes a joke about somebody who's in power, that's kind of fair game, right? Unless the joke is pointing out things that would be kind of, hate speech. So just to go over this, the norms. You can't make your cartoon about someone's race, about their gender, their sexual preferences, or any of that. I will not only not mark it, I will set up a meeting for you with administration to explain about the norms and values of our school. Basically, if you think of the dress code, that's what the visuals are in our school, right? So no genitalia, no buttocks, nipples, no drug or alcohol references. And yes, this is censorship, okay? And if you say, well, what about free speech? It's a school. You can have free speech outside of school. This is a dictatorship. I'm sorry. It's not a democracy. You can't vote yet unless you're 18. So, and if you're 18, well, you can vote. That's good. But you still don't get a vote in my class. I'm sorry. So anyway, what's coming up is you're going to be creating your own political cartoon. It can be based on a world issue. I don't want any cartoons based on Canadian issues because this is not a Canadian lit class, right? So it can be something happening in the States, in Australia. It can be an issue that affects everybody, like climate change, right? General world issues, or really specific world issues. If there's countries that you have connections to, that you're interested in something going on there. So you're going to be doing some visual research. So for the next couple of things, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be going online and sorry, you're going to be going online and you're going to be researching find at least 3 political cartoons for each of the topics that I'm going to list in the political cartoon research assignment, okay? So this isn't really meant to be like a quiz. Obviously, this was just the lesson that I would have normally taught you if I wasn't sick. So if you have questions or if you want to discuss any of this stuff, be sure to just go on Teams, right? Go and chat on Teams, and I'll be on chat during school hours, so I can talk to you about any of this stuff. And do look up further the things that I'm mentioning. I'll post them all on Teams. You'll see them. So that's that's the end of the lesson. What are you doing? Oh my God. Okay, yeah, definitely Yep. Okay. So we're done. We're done. Quit that. It's gross. Okay. So that's the main lesson. You guys are working on. You should be done your manifestos, and you should be working on researching the political cartoons and sending me your research, and then you should be working on making your political cartoons. And yeah, that's that. Bye. Why won't this stop? Ah.